Good day, everyone. This is Dr. David Phelps of the Freedom Founders Mastermind community and the Dentist Freedom Blueprint podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about some excerpts and some ideation and some constructs that are coming out of my newest book, which is Inflation, the Silent Retirement Killer. This book is hitting the publishing houses right now as we speak. I've got it available on PDF digital download. It'll be on Kindle and also Audible, and our print edition will be out subsequently. But right now, this information is so important that I want to get it out to you right now. So I'm going to split this podcast into 2 weeks, give you half this week and half next week. I will also put the link for the PDF download so you can get it right away. I think this is some of the most timely information that I could possibly give you right now based on the volatility of the marketplace, what the Federal Reserve is doing right now, why they're doing it, and where things are going to go. So I'll let you jump in, listen to this week's podcast, and the subsequent session will start in just about next week with the second half. See you then. Hi, I'm Dr. David Phelps, the CEO and founder of the Freedom Founders Mastermind community. I'm adding some adjunct and ancillary material to the published work that my team and I just put out in this book right here, Inflation, the Silent Retirement Killer. This book is very, very timely. We put a lot of time and effort into it. In fact, I'll say it's a great team effort. Having a great team is something that allows me to do what I love to do, which is about having freedom and being in a place that I want to be, and I want you to be as well. The key aspects of this book are that the timeliness of the book is so important that I want to give some additional key constructs that go along with the book with this presentation. This book is built on a lot of history and a lot of technical data we put together. If you want to jump into it and really get the crux of the matter without having to read the whole book, I hate to tell you not to read the whole book because it's very interesting historical data that we've proven our points and where we believe the market's going. But if you don't want to get into that right away, I would suggest you read the introduction and then go to chapter 6. Now, after you do that, you'll get the essential premise of why I believe what I believe and what the research has told us and history has showed us and what my experience has been over being an investor, my own investor, being on the top of my own frontier for the last 42 years, what we see coming down the pipeline, and then chapter 6, which outlines what I believe one needs to do to position themselves from all three, a personal basis, a business standpoint, assuming you're still in business. If you're not, then that wouldn't apply. And then your investments, which everybody, until the day you die, you're going to hopefully be invested somewhere. And what that looks like. Got to realize that the last 40 years, really since 1982, we have been in a declining inflationary market that's called disinflation, not deflation, but disinflation overall. There's been some deflationary market cycles, in between. Certainly in I've gone through all these cycles, so I can speak to them. 1986, after the Tax Reform Act was passed then, which took away a lot of the tax benefits of real estate. We went through the savings and loan crisis of the late 80s, early 90s, which didn't affect the whole country, but affected a large part of the country. We certainly went through the dot-com crisis in the late 90s and 2000. We went through the Great Recession, 2008. We've gone through the COVID deflationary period of just the last 2 years. And of course, now what we're dealing with is the effects, the consequences of the last couple of years, but also building back, even coming out of the Great Recession in 2008. What's different about our situation right now? Why are we dealing with inflation today when we didn't deal with inflation coming out of 2008, when certainly we had a rather heavy market correction, the Great Recession, which was built on the back of a lot of Wall Street buying subprime mortgages and then rolling those out to investors with people who didn't have the wherewithal to pay. That was the basis of that downturn. I think the one we're going to have now or going forward is not going to be the same thing, but still there are many factors in place. The fact that we now have over $30 trillion in national debt, and if you add the other entitlements, Medicare, Social Security, all the additional promises that the government continues to make about just handing out money, we call it helicopter money, which we saw a lot of that in the last 2 years. I don't think that's over. I think that we're going to see more of that coming forward, and that all that stimulus, not based on production, which is the GDP. If you're not producing anything, but you're throwing money into the marketplace, you're going to have inflation. which is devaluation of the dollar, which is exactly what we're seeing right now. And we haven't seen that in 40 years. But this time is different. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet which is the assets, which is all of the bonds and the mortgage-backed securities that it's purchased over the last 12, 13 years since 2008, doubled in the last 2 years. They were at about $4.5 trillion, which is a lot. Which is, I mean, you can't imagine $4.5 trillion. That's historically, more than we've ever had. Well, they doubled that. We're at $9 trillion now, and that doubled that in just the last 2 years with coronavirus. Now that we've had all the stimulus and people have been kind of floated through the pandemic, which again, I'm not going to look back in history and try to Monday morning quarterback all that was done. It was definitely a lot of variables in place, and I think government officials sort of did what they thought they had to do. There was a lot of misinformation, but we can't go back on that. It is what it is today. And the fact that we had all this money that was parlayed into the marketplace to really keep the safety net under the economy from just going through an absolute depression, well, you can say maybe that's a good thing. We didn't want to go back to a 30s type depression where people are in food lines and had nothing at all. But on the other side, there's always a price to be paid, and that price is just now starting to be paid. I don't think we've begun to see even the beginnings of what we're going to see coming down the pipeline. We're in a period right now. I'm recording this right now in April of 2022. We're in a period right now where we're just 6 months off from the 2022 midterm elections. And again, unfortunately, much of what is done today in our country from a political standpoint is based on politics. It's not based on what's good for the country. That's where we've gone. And it's both sides. It's both sides. Both sides, there is really an elitist group, both on the Republican and Democratic side, that really don't care. There are a few that care, but most don't care. Most are just in it to ride for themselves, even though they will speak to solving problems for the common person, the common man. I just think it's all to keep their position, and they will say one thing and do something else. It's absolutely 100% irresponsible what politicians on both sides of the aisle have allowed to happen. Again, not just the last 2 years, but I mean, going back decades. I mean, George Bush, caused a significant rise in the national debt with deficit spending. I mean, Ronald Reagan, who I think was an excellent president in so many ways. No one's perfect, but also had a, relatively speaking, smaller than today by a long shot, but still relatively speaking, back in the 80s, allowed the deficit spending to increase the national debt. The Obama years, 8 years, again, exploded it up. And, I think we're at 10 trillion at the end of Obama's period. Donald Trump in office, again, I think he was basically good for business and did some good things, but once again, played the game of more deficit spending. And of course, had the onset of the coronavirus during his latter part of his term, which again, that's where the stimulus money came out, PPP loans, unemployment benefits on steroids, child tax credit was expanded. All of this money produced in the marketplace, put it into the marketplace without actual production to take place. So people were sitting around with a lot of money. And the money wasn't really allocated to where it needed to go. It's just the inefficiencies of the government. That's what the problem is with the government. It's inefficient. It takes our taxpayer money and that's not enough for them. So they have to expand credit and make more fiat currency that's not backed by anything. And that's going to cause inflation. And here we are today. Also, we have the supply chain issues that are still on the back end of COVID. So those are in place. We have the Russia-Ukraine invasion, which is again disrupting supply chains in wheat and commodities and oil and gas in Europe, which trickles back and affects the entire globe. We have in China, they're still dealing with COVID at a greater level, and they literally come in and just shut down their entire cities and port cities. And again, that's just going to disrupt and cause more inflationary pressure. So a lot of these things combined, but the big one, why this time is different, is that we have such a huge hangover of fiscal and monetary policies that have led to all of this debt. Debt has to be paid back in some form or fashion. Either has to be paid back with actual hard money, or soft money. Now, you pay back with hard money means we'd have to go to an austerity mode here in this country, which no politician is going to do because they'd be thrown out of office because they've made this country think that everything's free, or most people think things are free, that money's handed out, that things are handed out, services are handed out, everything should be free. And that's not true. It can't be. There's always a price to be paid. So if you're not going to pay it back with hard money and actually write the checks, which would mean lifestyles and everything would have to be downsized, then you pay it back with soft money, which is monetization of the debt, which is what inflation is all about. Soft money is still kicking the can down the road. It's literally enslaving the future generations to this massive debt. Yes, the politicians and the administrations in office will long be gone and will not be dealing with this, but they are setting up their kids and grandkids in the next generations to be dealing with this. That's what I think where the crime is. If we had to pay currently for what is being done, well, people wouldn't stand for it. But these are the games that politicians play. So understand, it's always a game. You've got to figure out how you're going to play on this new board. Think of it as a board game. The rules have changed. You used to think it used to work one way, but they've come in and changed the rules, and now you have to reset how you think about playing this game. Taking a conservative approach, which is where I come from. My background's being conservative in really all things I do in life. You might say that Dave Ramsey, who preaches against debt, almost debt of any kind, would be like the smart, safe way to go. And for a lot of people, that is a good way to go. But if you want to stay ahead of the games the Fed and the government are playing with our money and our futures, you can't do that. If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.